think that was the difference with the 60s, is that people didn't care to explain themselves. People, you know, if people didn't get it, they weren't invited.
The last chance you had to shock people, just by the way you looked, just by the way you were, you know. You didn't even have to think about it or work at it at all. You could just walk down the street and people go, oh my God, you know. That was fun.
Marty just came up and asked, hey, do you want to start a band? To a total stranger. I said, well, sure, why not? It seemed to be the thing to do at the time.
Here, music is blaring forth from the open windows of an apartment on the corner of Haight and Ashbury, while in the street below, a crowd of hippies celebrates the sunny day. Traffic stops. The crowd grows. Finally, the police roll in with paddy wagons and nightsticks.
We were much too busy being in the middle of the 60s to wonder, even to this day, why San Francisco. San Francisco's always been a border town, borderland kind of town, where all the strange people come to do strange things, stranger than most things. Drugs, social experimentation, sexual experimentation, anti-authoritarian, if you will, experimentation.
Was anti-establishment. It was the first openly anti-establishment musical scene.
But it really was no audience, you know, to speak of. I mean, there was no entertainer entertained thing. Everybody was entertaining. Everything there was entertaining. Every event, everything that happened was entertaining.
Was rather communal in the sense that Santana, the Grateful Dead, the Brother in the Holding Company. We would play many gigs together, benefits, strange gatherings of, they called the tribes, for lack of a better word. It was very pagan, a celebration of human events, celebration of humanity around you, enjoying the people that you were with to the nth degree, enjoying the herbs and vegetables that God gave to us.
I'm out of drugs. Do you have any drugs? Excuse us, do you have any drugs?
We were just another signal that things are changing. Basic institutions are crumbling about you, and it's chaos.
The incidents are so bad, so contrary to our standards of human behavior, that I couldn't possibly recite them to you here from this platform in detail. 3 rock and roll bands were in the center of the gymnasium playing simultaneously all during the dance, and movies were shown on 2 screens. These movies were the only lights in the gym proper. They consisted of color sequences that gave the appearance of different colored liquids spreading across the screen, followed by shots of men and women on occasion. Shots where the men and women's nude torsos twisted and gyrated in provocative and sensual fashion.
So music was like the Pied Piper that led kids off the asphalt and out of the suburbs and into some other kind of reality. So we began creating free stores where the goods were free and the rolls were free. Free food, crash pads, free medical clinics.
Are you a musician looking for a band?
Doing what? Being able to do
bass guitar, lead guitar, drums, anything. We got several things.
Do they need a singer?
No, I don't think anybody needs a singer.
And by some fluke of an accident, I discovered I had this incredibly loud voice. So I started singing blues because that was always what I liked. And, you know, I got in a bluegrass band, played, you know, hillbilly music for free beer.
Thought you had found yourself a good girl, one who would love you and give you the world. And you find, honey, you but miss you. Come to me, honey, I'll do what you choose. I want you to.
I first saw Janis Joplin when she sat in with Big Brother at the Avalon Ballroom, and we played together at the Family Dog. I started falling in love and lived together for 4, 5, 6 months, I guess, in a couple of different locations in the Haight. The Janis that I knew was not the performer that public is familiar with. She was very relaxed, very intelligent, very creative, ambitious, but not overly ambitious, and very into her family, and enjoying the community of the Haight-Ashbury, which was very small and very affectionate at that time.
What do you need? Tell your mama, babe. What you want? Tell your mama, babe. What do you need? What do you want? What do you need? What you want? Wow! I'll make everything all right.
What is it you think young people are looking for today?
Sincerity and a good time.
Are they finding it?
I don't know about you, Daddy, but I'm fine. At least I'm having a good time. You know? I think they're looking for people not to lie to them.
The kids today aren't just going to accept what's laid down for them by the older generation.
All they want you to do, they want you to grow up, get an education, raise children, and die.
There's a whole sense of freedom in San Francisco right now. When you have a city that's free and the youth are free, they're going to go in every direction they can.
Peace in America, peace in Vietnam.
After the first thing called the human being, that thing was like, yeah, there is all these people that we're all, you know, it's like, yeah, there is a community. There is this whole big community. We're all those people who are the weird ones, you know. And it was all of a sudden you discovered all these people who were like you know. And they were all people who were influenced by the beatniks.
The Beats were into their authentic expression. They were into living authentic lives that were based on their real feelings, not their conditioned feelings. And I think they stood as a kind of beacon to personal integrity in that way. So you add psychedelics to that, and you've got the Haight-Ashbury.
The hippies are capable of extremely hard work. This is the house of a popular local band which plays hard rock music. They call themselves the Grateful Dead. They live together comfortably in what could be called affluence. There are many other similar houses or apartments in Haight-Ashbury, maintained by hippies who work in places where employers do not mind bizarre dress or long hair. Their concept of a new style of life unites them.
We would all like to be able to live an uncluttered life, a simple life, a good life, you know, and like think about moving the whole human race ahead a step or a few steps. And,
or half a step.
Yeah, or half a step. I think that most of the people who are hippies now came to it through drugs.
Yeah, but it's not a dope movement. We're not trying to spread dope.
Yeah, but I think personally that the more people turn on, the better world it's going to be.
Look for a while at the chant, cats on flower crown, walk jingle here from bed, that's Pop, don't want to trip for silver, come on
This traveling roadshow with the Grateful Dead and the pranksters came swirling through called Can You Pass the Acid Test? So I was all for that. You know, I'm looking to always expand my horizons and peripheries and saw them off if possible.
Acid became a big part of the thing while it was still legal. And as soon as they saw that people were having fun, they, of course, made it illegal. Common hallucinogenic experiences were like tribal harvest festivals on the Sadie Hawkins Day, total abandon, rejecting everything and looking for something positive and new, a total sexual abandon, drug abandon, dancing abandon.
We had an opportunity to visit highly experimental places under the influence of highly experimental chemicals before a highly experimental audience, you know? It was ideal, you know?
It's an interactive event, the Grateful Dead. We've become one big entity tied at the heart. That's what it's all about. We're not the whole event, but we're an important part. We're what the event sounds like, and we offer a space to ritualize it.
So these were like mass excuses for letting yourself go without being the spotlight of anything. Even the bands, Grace used to say, the only reason she enjoyed being on stage at these things was because the stage was the least crowded place at the party. and you could see up over everybody and see what was going on everywhere.
One time I hitchhiked from Austin to San Francisco with this guy, and then later, his name is Chet Helms. Later, he got involved in promoting the dances in San Francisco.
I love the acoustic draping in the Avalon, which gave it a wonderful, warm, interior, womb-like sound. I love the sprung dance floor, which if you got 300 or 400 people dancing on the floor at one time, the floor would rise to meet you and lift you even higher, you know.
The Avalon and such similar institutions are the few socializing institutions which teach people how to live and be with one another.
They were experimenting with being loose at the beginning also. It's like, oh my God, it's safe here. And I can, you know, eat my chocolate cigarettes without anybody catching me. I can hug a girl, or I can put paint on my face. I can put on Goodwill clothes. I can act out cavalierism. You know, there was a very nice feeling of open airness, even though you were indoors.
Well, Chet was the, he was the mellow guy, and Bill was the bully, you know. So Chet did it in a nice homespun way, and Bill was really aggressive and really wanted to make a home for rock and roll, and he had big plans.
There was a jam session. Michael Bloomfield was playing Hammond organ, Jerry Garcia was playing guitar, Paul Kantner was playing guitar, and I waited for Jerry to finish the solo, and then, you know, they said, go ahead. So I jumped on it, and when I finished, Bill came over and said, hey, yeah, that's pretty good. You got a band? I said, yeah, I got a band. He said, okay. He said, I want you to come on over and open up for the Loading Zone and the Who, you know? At that time, everybody was playing blues. Jimi Hendrix, Cream, John Mayall, just louder and maybe a little more adventuresome chords, but it was still the blues. We came out with some blues, but the foundation was Afro-Cuban music. So all of a sudden, the women could dance.
And there wasn't this, wanna dance, honey? You know, my name is George. What's yours? Charlotte? Out of sight, Charlotte. No, they would walk in and if 10 people were dancing, they would join a circle. Or they'd see one girl standing there, and they would just move. And they may not say anything to each other all night long. Or they may leave together. But if they didn't leave together, it was a thank you. Okay. That was a fantasy, but it was nice. And it was healthy. And nobody lost. And the key to those years for me was that everybody won and nobody lost. The musicians had a good time, the producer had a good time, the public had a good time.
Taking their social cue from the idea of endless summer and California culture. All of a sudden, almost overnight, people were growing their hair long, taking lots of drugs, and trying their darndest to all screw each other freely.
Sexuality became less important, oddly enough, in the sense that you didn't have to spend this long courting time of the boy always figuring out a way to get inside the girl's pants. There were no pants. It was the 60s.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to go to one of those other things, do a thing dedicated to that little girl over there called Hartley. Thing called Foxy Lady. Look out.
There wasn't necessarily just one way that the world was going to be, whether it was spiritual power, emotional power, sexual power, physical power. Hendrix, you know, all people who just came in and knocked all those doors down. His guitar playing that spoke of some deep ecstasy that could be had, you know?
Around 66, it was more of the psychedelic. You know, people would get more experimental, like Hendrix and the Doors.
What the music is your special friend. Dance on fire is intense. Music is your only friend. Till the end.
I thought it was very dark music before I heard it. I thought it was kind of like mysterious and dark. I didn't know what to make of it. But I thought the words were really, really good. You know, you could tell right away that, well, we got a writer here.
Jim Morrison was a post-beat writer. He was absolutely influenced by Kerouac, Ginsberg, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac.
What have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? Ravaged and plundered, ripped her and bit her, stuck her with knives in the side of the dawn, and tied her with fences and dragged her down.
We tried to find that freedom in art, poetry, and music, whereas the Beats were all into literature and poetry and jazz. We tried to combine poetry and music, poetry and rock and roll.
When the music's over,
The creation of the Doors, it happened to be in California, but obviously what was going on was a psychedelic revolution was happening in all of the major cities and then into the minor small town college towns all across America. It was happening in New York and Chicago and San Francisco and Seattle and Portland.
music is your special friend. Dying's on fire is...
It was a perfect age to get the full effect of psychedelia. I was like 16 years old, watching Jimi Hendrix play and going to the Hyde Park to see the Rolling Stones and listening to all the American psychedelic bands, the sort of San Franciscan sort of odd bunch, but also the Velvet Underground and the Doors.
Psychedelic craze was in, and we wanted to go against the grain as far as the flavor of music at that time. We turned it back and went more blues, more roots music oriented. So when we played for Bill Graham at Fillmore East, that was one of our requests, was to turn the light show way down, if not completely off.
When I get over this mountain, you know where I wanna go. Straight down the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. Big Charles, Louisiana, little Mexico, I want to. She told me just to come on by if there's anything she could do.
Bob Dylan got us to Woodstock. We played with Bob for some shows through the United States and Canada. We followed Bob up to the country and started getting together in the afternoons and trying to come up with tunes. Bob and Richard used to have a typewriter that sat on the coffee table there in the living room, and the two of them would go by and type little notes to each other, and one would read what the other one wrote, put a couple of lines in under that. A lot of times by the end of the day, we'd have a couple of 3 pages out of there.
I had 'em 5-1, and that nag to win came around the track. Sure enough, we had one.
Sex, drugs, rock and roll, those are the things that they're using to sell rock and roll, which seems a damn shame when you get down to it. The music is certainly capable of doing that on its own.
The Stones eroticised it, made it wild, made it dangerous, made it revolutionary, made it druggy. You know, I don't think the Beatles were taking drugs, but nobody knew. You know, you only knew if you hung out with them. But the Stones took drugs in public, on stage, you know.
Oh yeah, my buddy, old Lucifer, you know, hey, we're like this, you know. Maybe we are, I don't know. I mean, we always thought it was a laugh, you know, the 5 guitar players, you know, we're gonna overthrow the country. I mean, they're starting to treat us like revolutionaries. Geez, great, just smoke a little dope, you know what I mean? You know, and then you got the half of Scotland Yard working full time on you. You know, surely you got better things to do, boy.
Keith did his homework very
carefully. Jagged did his homework carefully. He had seen Tina Turner, he'd seen Little Richard, he learned from the best. Most great artists watch the best person out there, and they emulate that person, and then after a while it grows into their own particular style.
It's all very kind of sexually charged, the whole thing, really. I'm just the same as a stripper. I go out there and do the same thing, bumps and grinds to music, and take off lots of my clothes. I mean, so there's not really a lot of difference between stripping and being a rock singer.
America was a fairyland, and all the best music came from there, and they had the best cars, and the chicks looked better. So it was like throwing a load of demons into heaven, and letting them loose.
Television's boring you. Let's make sure there ain't nobody there. Can you come a little bit? Okay, you can tell us when. Okay. Okay? Now.
I've known worse, I've known far more.
The Beatles and the Stones, obviously. Cream came over with real challenging musical landscapes, and pushing what the Beatles opened up.
Ginger Baker, Keith Moon. Keith Moon was another drummer that everybody overlooks. I mean, he was an incredible drummer.
Keith, what's your opinion of your public image?
I think it sort of varies with every record I put out. I think sometimes could you get on with it? Will you keep it together? No, I think I'm very reliant on my management and my public relations people.
When you start smashing a guitar on a stage in Germany, it happened in parts of the States, a policeman would walk on the stage and put a gun to my head and say, "Stop, or I'll shoot you." And I would kind of look at him and go, hold on a minute, this is a guitar, not a human being, remember, It became hugely important because it was actually perceived to be a social statement.
So rock and roll was the beginning of the brand new world in terms of a generation bringing on its own consciousness through music to other generations.
Hey, look yonder, tell me what's that you see? Marching to the fields of Dunkirk. Looks like hands and...
Looking out over Woodstock, something I expected should and did happen. That was our national celebration of multicultural community. That's what Woodstock was, the top of the mountain, the plateau. We got up there. We were now able to walk across. We had actually reached a point in time and place which could never be erased from the history of the world.
Hey, look yonder, tell me what's that you see? Marching to the fields of Korea. Looks like Hanson Johnny.
It's really amazing. It looks like some kind of biblical, epical, unbelievable scene.
Get back now. Let's go through. Everything's got room to flow here.
Suddenly, the whole world was indeed watching us, and we had a chance to show the world what it would be like to pull ourselves up by our collective bootstraps and let them see how it would be if we ran the show.
We'll be free, baby boy, we'll be free, yeah, free, yeah, 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 yeah.
Remember
remember being up in that helicopter with the state cops, you know, and one cop said to the other one, you know there's hippies smoking dope down there. And the other one said, yeah, well, I ain't gonna do anything about it, are you? And the other one said, And we were just flying in, I suddenly realized we could do anything we want, because there's just more of us than them.
Hey, look yonder, tell me what's that you see? Marching to the field of Birmingham. Looks like handsome Johnny with his hand rolling a pistol.
There were many messages that we wanted to convey to people about civil rights, about pacifism, but there seemed to be no entry to mass media at all. And along came the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and suddenly we all snapped. These messages can be put in the form of rock and roll.
Some of you are not even listening. Tell me what it is we've got to do. Wait for our fields to start glistening. Hey, wait for the bullets to start whistling.
We were the rock and rollers who became those radical, you know, or radicalized kids of the 60s. But Woodstock was not sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was civil rights. It was Vietnam War. It was youth power. It was the nation coming together.
Unlike a lot of protest anti-war songs of that whole entire decade, Fixing to Die Rag was embraced by military personnel in Vietnam, much to my surprise.
Now come on, mothers throughout the land, pack your boys off to Vietnam. Come on, fathers, don't hesitate. Send your sons off before it's too late. Be the first one on your block, have your boy come home in the box.
You know, and you see how they function on their own. Without cops, without guns, without clubs, without hassles. Everybody pulls together and everybody helps each other. And it works. It's been working since we got here. And it's going to continue working. And no matter what happens when they go back to the cities, this thing has happened. And it proves that it can happen.
I think Janis Joplin said it best when she was on stage. She said, if you have any food left, share it with your brother and your sister. And that's the person on your right and the person on your left.
If you want to grab somebody from the lapels, you know, and you want to make it like, listen to me, you go. So you're hitting two notes at the same time instead of, it sounds, you know, tame, but if you go. You have to have a real deep convictions before you hit that note. And most of the time people go, damn, you know, because, you know, whether it's Ry Cooder or whoever, they hit one note, every hair in your body is going to stand up. And you feel like you just made love or you just touched God's feet or both at the same time. You know, that's when music is really, really good. You know, and that's what I learned from Coltrane and Bob Marley and Jimi Hendrix, is that music is a complete ocean.
Music is the whole thing, man. It's an expression of the younger generation. Now, we have the power, we have the tolerance. We can go in front of a television camera, we can go on the air, and we can say, with definition, that Hitler was wrong, that people who hate Negroes are wrong, right? And we can get up there and shout it to the world.
When rock and roll came along, it gave power to the kids on the street, it gave them something to do, it gave them a feeling that there was something that was theirs, that was not a part of their parents' world, and it was beloved because of that.
I was hanging out with Stephen, they had thrown me out of the Byrds, and I was singing harmony with him because he had great songs. We dragged Nash off someplace and, you know, sang with him, and it was an astounding thing what he did. How do he do that? We knew what we wanted to do then.
Now, you got to understand, here's three guys that had been and had bad relationships in bands. David had been thrown out the Byrds, the Buffalo Springfield had broken up, the Hollies were less than desired by me. We didn't want to be in a band, again, ever. And we realized that we would have to be in a band because we wanted this sound, we wanted to do it, that's all we wanted to do.
How was the festival in general? Would you consider it a success?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It's probably the strangest thing that's ever happened in the world.
I still have my mud.
About 2 nights ago, that place up there was the second biggest city in New York.
People would begin to follow the festivals, not so much for the tunes, but to get together and create these instant cities, to do this life support, to figure out the food, the garbage, the whole deal, and to live this positive creative anarchy that I think eventually began to terrify the powers that be.
Well, I think a good thing. I dug it. It was a good festival. I've been to 4 festivals now, and it's about the second best one I've been to. My favorite was Kickapoo.
It was the worst drug orgy that was ever held in the United States.
This wasn't just camping out, like sportsmen do, or even outdoors enthusiasts. This was wallowing.
You bathe like this often?
No, this is the first time since I've been here.
Do you feel the festival had some motivation with the fact that you're bathing nude?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't be bathing nude if other people were bathing nude too.
Be on my side or be on your side, baby. There is no reason for you to hide.
It's like in the spirit of the whole festival. People sharing the water.
This incredibly tight harmony sound, and where was room for somebody else here?
He was just so musical and so good that we thought, well, maybe cramming 4 into a space that's only big enough for 3 will be explosive.
Neil was something else. What a piece of work he was.
Neil was sharing a room with a gerbil.
Actually, 2 bush babies, but
he
was, Harriet and Speedy, in a Caravan Lodge Motel in San Francisco.
You'd walk in the door and these things would ricochet past your face.
They go,
Don't let him out! Don't let him out!
I'm not kidding. Not kidding.
Insane.
Harriet and Speedy, the bush babies. Of course, Neil is the guy that ended up with 300 chickens in his basement because he'd been given a present of 2 chickens and couldn't kill them.
Neil has had an incredible career, the godfather of grunge, and all that, whatever they're calling him now.
I was into the rock and roll and the whole hippie concept. To me, it ended with Woodstock. And a lot of people thought it was just beginning. But my interpretation was, you're going to have some jive in it. So it used to be share this, share that. That had its own kind of protection, because it was all done, weird as it sounds, out of love, whatever they was doing.
There was a moment there where there was a vision. There was a very clear, wonderful vision but it had to do with everybody acting in good faith. It had to do with everybody behaving right.
Okay, everybody knows there's something funny going on.
Yeah, your money in your pocket.
Tell them want to make more money, you prick. Turn it up.
Man, you got your money. Come on, let them in. You're in a revolution, man. Let them in.
The question of kids now wanting everything to be free is very hard to handle because it's hard to talk to those kids.
Even you?
What?
Even you?
Even me, hard to talk to them, of course. Because to them, I represent, among other things, somebody who has money, and that makes them angry.
The Isle of Wight Festival was the Hate the Performer Festival. It was bigger than Woodstock, and it was international. It was surrounded by a galvanized fence, which went all the way around. The audience was rough and unruly, and they booed and hissed and yelled, "You sold out. The music belongs to the people. Let's bring the walls down. We're sitting here in our own shit, and you're back there in your Rolls Royce."
None of this capitalist shit! Open this door!
The music isn't revolutionary at all. It's called big business. It's a big business trip, that's all.
And if you come to this country at our invitation, and we have to charge you through no choice of our own, £3, right? If you don't want to pay it, don't fucking well come.
Listen a minute, will you? Will you listen a minute? Now listen. A lot of people who get up here and sing, I know it's fun, it's a lot of fun. It's fun for me. I get my feelings off through my music. But listen, you got your life wrapped up in it, and it's very difficult to come out here and lay something down when people... I think that you're acting like tourists, man. Give us some respect.
Paradise, put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique and a swinging hot spot.
is my festival. If I'd been allowed to go on stage, we might have discovered that I was one of the most coherent people around here. Coming to talk to an old friend of mine, Joni Mitchell.
Wait a second, please.
We are stardust.
With the festival.
We are
I'm
gold.
only taking pictures.
Got to get ourselves back into the garden.
You don't know what you've got till it's gone. The paved paradise, put up a parking
It was really a moment. There was like a breath there for a moment. There was like an open door. You know, it's like, ooh, look. You know, then bam, it slammed shut again immediately.
with a DVD now. Any spots on my elbow, leaving the birds and the bees. Please don't it always seem to
Whereas I was a ham on a small scale, and I liked the small clubs. The bigger the stage got, the more isolated you were. I'd been in the street too long, going anywhere I wanted to by myself too long to give it up, you know. So the idea of being protected and sheltered, and it was excruciatingly depressing to me, the change. I had no designs to be a star.
Nobody wants to be in the center of the spotlight, you know, not in your life. Maybe in your work, but not in your life.
You read about yourself in the papers and people that you're supposed to have slept with, hotels that you're supposed to have burned to the ground, and at first you feel kind of violated. And then you realize, hell, this character is much more interesting than I am. I should run with it.
This whole success thing, it hasn't yet really compromised the position that I took a long time ago in Texas. That was to be true to myself, to be the person that was on the inside of me, and not play games. I said, that's what I'm trying to do mostly, in the whole world, is to not bullshit myself.
Anybody can protest, you know, and anybody can write beautiful songs and all that. But sometimes if you have a talent, or if people are noticing you enough, then you should really try to do as much as you possibly can with it, you know. Like what we're going to do now is chop down the words now and try to make it really tight. And what we're saying is not protesting, but giving the answers as some kind of solution, you know, instead of going towards a negative scene.
Jimmy was quite an interesting man, completely different than his public image. He was supposed to be this wild man, and when in fact he was very gentle, very introspective, very bright man. One of the greatest musicians I'll ever have the pleasure of knowing.
Our last gig together was the Isle of Wight, right before he died, which I had a big conversation with him there too about the problem.
Jimmy was a great guitar player. I thought he was the best, or the most original. I thought he had a really original act, you know, and that's all, man. I don't know nothing about his business, whether he was a casualty, and I wish he was still here.
How well would Hendrix be playing by now? What would Janis be singing like by now? We're talking major stuff here. Genius that got dropped on the floor and ground into the dirt.
Look at my life. Look at my generation. How did that work? Jimi Hendrix, Brian Jones, Janis Joplin, Keith Moon. The list is fucking endless. They're dead people. My life is full of dead people. My friends are dead. My friends. They might be your fucking icons. They're my fucking friends. They're dead.
Janis and Jimmy didn't have a family. They didn't have nothing to go home to. A family, a group that could really tell them what, you know, what's really going on. Here's what you really look like, man. Not what you think you look like.
I will get by.
If you look at the Dead and the band as two examples, they're still together and we're not, because they ended up keeping their own counsel and they ended up keeping their family together.
For the last 3 years, I think, the Grateful Dead have been the largest grossing live act in the world. It's amazing.
The ABCs, we all think of, try to live a little.
It's more fulfilling to be a person than a personality. Most personalities that I've seen, limousines and suites, you know, that stuff cannot hug you.
We were right about civil rights. We were right in that love is better than hate. We were right in that peace is better than war. It turns out, weren't right about drugs.
The free sexuality was an interesting experiment. It failed.
Well, when I think about the 60s, I think of the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement.
Well, I call it the under-the-counter culture, and the thing is that we're coming out from under the counter. And there's a buzz going on these days called new volunteerism, where people are feeling they get to the bottom of their second BMW and they find it wanting.
That was the point of rock and roll at the time, to become a new tribe, to bring America into a cleaner, purer realm of existence.
You were raising your flag and you were screaming aloud and together. We thought there were millions. There were only hundreds or maybe thousands of us. But you can't stop a good idea or a feeling, and that's what we had.
For like 2 weeks in the middle of 1967 summer, it was perfect.
I will survive. We will get by.